We were just talking about trust there. Of course, a big part of the UK's future outside of the EU will be striking trade deals, agreements with other countries. But we've just gone back on a deal that we struck less than a year ago. Why should anyone trust us?
What we're doing, Sophie, is making sure that if the joint committee negotiations about the protocol fail, and there's still a way to go when it comes to that, we have an insurance policy here in the UK to make sure that any conflicts, any disagreements are not against the interests of the internal market of the United Kingdom, the sovereignty of our own country. This isn't something that we do lightly. This isn't something that we actually want to have to use. This is something that a responsible government does in order to prepare for the worst. But can I reiterate our steely determination to get a deal, not just the free trade deal, but the agreement on the protocol to make sure that it works in the interests of the Republic of Ireland, in the interests of the United Kingdom, and most importantly, in the interests of all the peoples of Northern Ireland.
What I'm trying to get my head around is why you need an insurance policy for your own insurance policy. Because if the deal is so bad, why did Boris Johnson come on this show and describe it as fantastic? Why did he go into an election campaign with it front and centre of that campaign? Was he lying when he said it was a good deal, or did he just not understand it?
Well, Sophie, I caught most of what you said there due to passing traffic, but I think what you said is, why are we putting an insurance policy on an insurance, a backstop on a backstop?
My question, I'll repeat the question. Boris Johnson said that the withdrawal agreement was a fantastic deal. He told me that. He went into an election campaign using on that deal. So when he's now saying that it's a bad deal, that you need an insurance policy against it, was he lying when he said the withdrawal agreement was a good deal, or did he just not understand it?
No, what we're doing is preparing for the eventuality, which we hope will not come to pass, of a failure by the joint committee that was set up under the protocol to come to an agreement as to how to operate it. You know, we're going to exhaust all those means in order to make sure that the protocol works. There are mechanisms that the joint committee can invoke that we will follow through with. But if that fails, if we are left by the end of the year with an unresolved position, it's our obligation to do something to make sure that we are prepared. You know, we could have just pretended that all was going to be well, avoided the issue, kicked the can down the road as perhaps we used to do, but that would have been an irresponsible approach. We need to be upfront about the potential problem that could arise. We're doing that, and that's why those clauses have been included.
I mean, we're talking here about joint committees, protocols, mechanisms, but really it strikes me that what's happened is actually very simple. The government's trying to override a deal that it struck less than a year ago. Now, as Lord Chancellor, you took an oath to protect the rule of law. And yet this week, the Northern Ireland Secretary, Brandon Lewis, told the House of Commons that the government is intending to break, or the internal market bill does break international law in a very specific and limited way. Are you going to resign?
It's not a question about me or my position. The whole government is actually committed to the rule of law. I, as Lord Chancellor, of course, speak more chiefly for the government on those general issues. And I can assure you that what we are doing is in accordance with, I think, actually the most honourable traditions of the British state, which is to alert everyone to the possibility of a problem, to actually legislate, prepare ourselves domestically for that, but to make the point that we're not at that stage yet, and we don't have to be. If all parties come together and work with a will to get these provisions agreed, then we won't need these clauses at all. That's the government's sincere wish. We are 100% committed to these negotiations. We're going to press on with them until the end. But at the same time, we have to be upfront and honest that there could be a conflict. And can I say this, Sophie? If there is a conflict between domestic and international law, as a government, we will seek to resolve that conflict as quickly as possible, as we have done in other instances where our domestic law has come into conflict or dislocation with international law obligations.
But the conflict is there because of a deal that you negotiated and told us all was fantastic. And I just want to go back to what Brandon Lewis said, because he said that the Internal Market Bill does break international law in a very specific and limited way. You took an oath to uphold the rule of law. So if the government breaks the law, will you resign?
If we get to the stage where we have a conflict of laws, it is the duty of the government to seek to resolve that. This isn't an unprecedented situation. The circumstances within which we are now find ourselves are, of course, unprecedented. But no government has ever had to face the job of disentangling Britain's relationship with the EU. This is totally new ground. I think it's up to us all in government to plot a way through this that makes sure that if conflicts arise, if differences arise, if there is a dislocation, then we should seek to resolve that. But make no mistake, we are absolutely committed to getting the Joint Committee negotiations resolved, and that we hope that these provisions will never ever have to be used. That's my belief, and that's the belief of the government.
I know that you want the provisions to never have to be used, but that's a little bit like saying, oh yeah, we bought a balaclava from the Crowbar, but we really hope we don't have to rob a house with them. It's not that reassuring, is it?
Well, look, I think analogies with the criminal law are wholly misplaced. What we're talking about here is intricate international law arrangements. I heard my friend and colleague, the Irish Justice Minister, set out her concerns. We take them extremely seriously as we do the peace process. I can reassure the Irish government, I reassure all friends in Europe that all we are seeking to do is to prepare the ground domestically if things are not resolved. That is a responsible course of action. We could have pretended that all was going to be well and just avoided the problem and then come into infraction and collision with Europe. I think that would have been dishonest, frankly. This is a much more direct approach. Yes, it sets up some difficult dichotomies, but I believe that with a will, we won't ever get to that situation.
I just wonder, it's hard to escape the feeling that actually Boris Johnson is pretty comfortable with the idea of not getting a trade deal. He's tearing up his own withdrawal agreement to give the government more flexibility if there isn't a trade deal. He must have known the impact that this explosive bill would have on the negotiations. We've heard the EU's concerns. Do you think the Prime Minister really wants a deal?
Absolutely. He wanted a deal last year. I believed him. I was right in my belief. I know and believe that he wants a deal this year. We as a government are working flat out to get that deal, the free trade deal, and also to resolve the protocol issues. That's our will. That's the collective will of the British government. We know it's in our national interest to get a good deal, and that's what we're all committed to doing.
You, of course, voted to remain. You say you believe the Prime Minister that he wants a deal. Do you ever worry you're being played?
Do I worry about what, sorry, Sophie?
Do you ever worry that you're being played?
I've been in politics and I'm old for a long time, and I'm old enough and ugly enough to know when I'm being played. And I can tell you, the Prime Minister knows my strong views about the need to work positively with our European neighbours. We as a government want a deal. We are negotiating hard to get that deal. Our will is absolutely settled and united, and we're going to get there.
OK, and just quickly, are you confident you've got the numbers to get this bill through the House of Commons and the House of Lords next week?
Well, this is the next point, because Parliament is going to be playing its full part in the debates to come about this important issue. That's a vital part of our democracy. It's an expression of parliamentary sovereignty, which, frankly, the Brexit debate has been all about. And I'm looking forward to carry on engaging with colleagues in both houses to listen to their concerns. I believe that this bill should get through. It must get through. It's Brexit critical. There are many measures in it that are vitally important for the 31st of December. And I very much hope that it will command the support of both houses in the debates to come.
Now, I'm keen to talk about coronavirus, COVID-19, something, of course, that all of us are very worried about. We heard from Professor Peter Openshaw earlier in the programme, who said the numbers are worrying. We might just have days to try and get a grip of this. Can you rule out another national lockdown?
Well, look, as the Prime Minister said, going to a national lockdown would indeed be a nuclear option. I think that here in autumn 2020, knowing much more as we do now about the nature of COVID, but still without a vaccine, we have to take a range of measures, which of course include enhanced testing, localised measures, and indeed the rule of 6 coming in tomorrow. I think the British public now know that by taking a combination of different measures, we can get through this period. You know, this is like a half marathon. You know, normally this time of the year, Sophie, I'm running half marathons, and you get to a point in the race where the gradient starts to go up. It feels really tough. You have to dig in, remember that the finishing line is there, and just concentrate on doing the job. And all of us, you know, government, members of the public, have a collective will to get through this, to save lives and to ultimately beat this virus. And I think the combination of measures that we now have are the right way to minimise the threat that we face.
I wish I could say that at this time I was usually running half marathons, but that would definitely be a lie. You're talking there about a range of measures. Do you think the government could be looking at curfews?
Look, I think that, as you've seen, we've been very prepared to move quickly where necessary and where the evidence points us. I think that there is an issue about social occasions and social events, and particularly young people perhaps getting together, enjoying themselves sometimes a bit too much and forgetting the importance of the rules. I think it would be idle of me to speculate as to what measures we might have to bring in as we approach the winter. I do think that what we're doing now is, you know, being clear about prioritising schools, colleges and the economy, and making the point that whilst social occasions are important, and of course family social occasions are particularly important, they do take, and they must take, second place to those priorities. And I think people understand that, they want to support that, and with the good sense of the British people, I think we can get the balance right.
One of the ways that you're trying to restrict those social interactions, of course, is the rule of 6. We've already mentioned it, that's coming in from tomorrow, the fact that you can't meet up with more than 6 people at a time. Is it okay to break that rule in a specific and limited way?
I like the link that you make there, Sophie. What we are seeking to do via enforcement of the rule of 6 is to encourage people to get it right, to advise them, and to enforce where the circumstances particularly demand it. The police are well used now to using their judgment in every situation that is presented to them. You know, we don't want to have to resort to enforcement proceedings, but we will do if we see egregious breaches, and of course the fines can be quite significant, particularly for those who repeat the infringements. Let's remember why we're doing this. We're doing this actually to protect each other and to save lives. And those basic messages were important back in the spring, they've been important through the summer, and they're even more important now.
I am, trying to make a bit of a genuine point here, though, because if the government says it's okay to break the law in a specific and limited way, why is it not okay for the rest of us to do that?
Well, going back to the issue we talked about, we're talking about a difference between international law and domestic law on a political scale. It's a world away, I would suggest, from issues of enforcement of the law and regulations on a day-to-day basis. This government is absolutely committed to the rule of law. We want to make sure that within our United Kingdom we have a single internal market that works for everybody, and that because of Brexit we have the sovereign power to make decisions here at home, and that of course includes the decisions that are made in England on COVID, in Wales, in Scotland and in Northern Ireland.
Now, we're running out of time, but there's one more question I want to ask you on coronavirus before asking about your sentencing reforms. And that is a campaign that's on the front of the Mail on Sunday today to try and allow partners to be present when a woman is giving birth. And often, of course, you know, you're thinking about women going to scan appointments where they might hear very difficult news without anyone with them, going through the experience of a miscarriage when it might be really important to have someone with you to those difficult hospital and doctor's appointments. Is it not time to relax the rules and allow people going through pregnancy and childbirth to have their support network with them?
Well, Sophie, you make a really powerful point, and all of us who have been through that process with our husbands, wives and partners know how vital it is to have that emotional support when pretty big life events happen, and can often happen so suddenly and without warning. I think it's vital that all local hospital trusts and local health bodies who have the responsibility for administering the rules in their particular area really lean into this issue. I know a lot of trusts are already opened up their rules to allow partners and families to be with people who are going through this. I think that's absolutely right. I know there are some who have yet to do that. I think my colleague Nadine Dorries, the Health Minister, has eloquently made the case for more consistency when it comes to those decisions. I would like to see more trusts get that balance right to allow loved ones in, particularly when difficult and tough news has to be delivered, and emotional support is absolutely vital.
Yeah, and you're right that, of course, that difficult and tough news, you don't always know when it is going to come. Just finally, Justice Secretary, you've got an announcement on sentencing this morning. What is it that you're trying to do?
Well, today we've been talking about the need to protect the public, and I want to take measures to deal with very serious offenders who have committed the most grave crimes, such as murder and often mass murder, to make sure that the sentence terms that they serve fit the seriousness of the crime. It's up to ministers to help set those starting points for the judges then to apply, and I'm going to be reforming the law further to end the situation where just because you might be under 21, the law bars the possibility of a whole life order, that is somebody serving all their term in prison. I think it's right to give judges that discretion, and later in the week I'll be announcing more measures in a sentencing white paper that will finally give the country a sense of what I have worked on for the last 30 years as a professional barrister and as a part-time judge, that I think that sentencing can be better, can be smarter and can be more balanced, genuinely in the interests of public protection and also rehabilitation wherever appropriate.